I get delted.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out because I was listening to you and all of a sudden,
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I actually got delted.
yeah,
See, I mean, that's my main concern and my main issue above all this other stuff
right,
is how can you increase the size of a DZ, increase the player count, expand the DZ when you can't even have the proper servers to carry what little bit is already there?
right.
It doesn't.
I don't think I just don't think
I mean, it's.
adding people to small diseases is going to work myself because the it was fine. Which even Division One had problems carrying 24 people in a server. The only time it got better is when people stopped playing. The server got more stable then. So if you got a full server in Division One and a DZ, you were getting stuck on stuff. You was getting kicked out of it. I mean, it was just like all kind of. But once the player base dwindled down, it got better. Which we don't need that. Let's see. But it's like he was talking about the PTS getting people to test stuff out. They're not on the PTS to test stuff out. It's just people just playing. They're not testing builds out. That's why you need somebody, that actually can test builds. I
Well, I
haven't found
mean,
anybody that I've watched.
I don't want to butcher your name. I understand that, odd, but you also got to understand that if their servers can't support, a full 12, then adding and making it to be able to try to support 16 to 20, it's going to be even worse than what it is. So the system, just as the RNG system that they said that's in place, they'd have to do all this rework, and that's why they went to a work around the issue instead of actually directly fixing the issue. And that's the same thing when it comes to the DZ. They already have the system in place as far as the NPCs, the size, things of this nature, and it's all set in an ecosystem based on 12 players. And if they can't figure out how to get 12 players to actually want to go into a server in the DZ to begin with, it's not going to matter if it can hold 20 or 50 if not even 12 people are wanting to actually even go in it. Because there is no risk reward. What made the Division 1 Dark Zone so great, even for PvE folk, because they had things inside that DZ that even PvE people wanted, so it would get them to have the balls enough to go in there and try to actually get those things. Yeah, it is their fault. What's up, Endo?
I'm just not catching back up. I was still in the old stream. I'm trying to get in back in it. Okay, there we go.
So, I mean, yeah, they've shot themselves in the foot, and now they're trying to backpedal. I mean, the whole Snowdrop engine is their fault, and they even stated as much that that engine that they use in Division One, as far as the way the NPCs would spawn inside things, acting sporadically, it was the engine's fault. But yet they still chose to use it in a part two.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are some positives. I mean, not everything is negatives. And if you played Division One and endured that roller coaster, then I know there's a lot of people that's upset. It's good to be. They have a right to be. I'm frustrated too. But I went through over 3 years of Division One, that roller coaster, and eventually they got it right. I mean, if you really love the game, you can't say, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and walk away. And then when knowing farewell, when new stuff comes out, you come right back to it.
Yep. A lot of people do it.
Well, Cody, I think that they did that for a reason, just like the video I put out today. Now, all the stuff that they unveiled last week and this week, now you can't tell me they figured all that out in 3 days of an ETF. They already had this
Yeah.
planned. They needed their yes men, their hype builders, and most of them are content creators on a mid-sized channel. They, offered them exposure to their channel, some little bit more popularity and hype, patted them on their ass, gave them free stuff, and sent them to go out and promote and say, "Oh, great things are coming." I mean, you even got content creators that are putting out, "Oh, new exotics," and saying this and that's going to be in the game, Epic Slayers, and there is no announcement of no new exotic.
Nope.
So in turn, I mean, some tend to put out and make false hope, which is they shouldn't.
It's all about the views.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say, in my opinion, that it's worse than Division One because Division One got pretty bad there. I mean,
Oh my God.
there was people literally rioting in the streets. I mean, as far as the discontent or the disdain from what they were doing in Division One, yeah, the uproar was just as equal to the uproar as far as what they're doing in Division Two. I mean, 1.3 shotgun meta, yeah, century shotguns, and then they would give something a buff. They would fix one thing, two things. I mean, it's exactly the same. It's just history is just repeating itself. It's all. And that's all we can do is hope, give our feedback, and pray that they listen. I mean, they're going to do what they want to do, regardless how much feedback we give them.
They stuck in their ways, man. 4 years of this.
But we do also need more content creators out there that won't sugarcoat things and tell you exactly how it is, and not blow smoke up its viewers' asses just for views. Yeah, I can see why they would appear that way. I mean, that's I think everybody sees them like that. And just like most people, when they try or do something new and it doesn't work out, then they don't have the stones to admit they've made a mistake or anything like that, because most multi-million-dollar companies won't come out and do that. What they'll do is hire a PR team, aka TF, and get them to try to turn the tides for them without admitting anything. Evan Ramos, I feel like they should clean house and bring in new devs that actually are going to tell them to need to do this or that. I agree. I don't do math. I'm not good at math. I mean, you can see my grammar. I mean, how can you expect me to do math?
That's me.
Ah, I didn't do nothing to him.
Oh, you underground. That's what.
But I mean, you also got to take in consideration it is the first interval of the PTS. In every PTS, nothing has stayed the same. If something's broken, it needs to be reported on. And then that takes, you did your duty of playing the PTS. You found these things out, and then you submit your findings. And if they don't in turn fix it, then that's on them. But at least you did do your due diligence to report said things. What's up, Zero? Yeah, because they started catering to, it seems like, the minority of what kept their original game going and appealed to, I hate to say it, to the mob crying instead of just following through, and in turn shot themselves in the foot. I mean, it's nobody's fault but their own.
snitch.
Well, I mean, that all has to be procced at the same time as well. I mean, in a perfect world, procking that all at the same time. Uh, but I mean, if I can get 104% LMG damage right now without having Berserk or anything else procced, I mean, I'm already up there in a Berserk build at 147% weapon damage. Well, with Berserk proc, I already have it an LMG that's 60k. Yeah, it's bullet reg, server issues, and then they come out with, oh, matchmaking is going to fix all of it? Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining.
Yep.
But I mean, despite all of that, I mean, there's people doing it now as far as the double heals. But what kind of counters do we actually have to combat that? Pestilence, Cloaked, Sweet Dreams. That's it.
So
That's one good thing that the Division 1 did have. It had pretty much basically a counter for everything. Yes, even the Nomad dependents. The counter to it was bleed them little bastards dry with Prit.
yeah, and there. Let's see.
Yeah, on my build I got up now just with Berserk procced and nothing else. Just base damage and Berserk. I'm already there on the way it currently is, Hans. Now, you add Sadist, on there instead of, like, unhinged, and then just have somebody in your group just randomly completely just toss Seekers everywhere. I mean, that only increases it 10 more percent, so then that pushes it up to like 157. End Up says the problem with the game is that it was brought out too early and not worked on the right way. They basically wanted to bring it out to kill the competition, but it totally failed. I agree. Gamer Tinky says was literally just typing that double heals. Trouble Duck, you missed the showstopper, don't you? I didn't really use the showstopper. I was always a Deadeye. Um, I liked my skull build, skull gloves, Barrett chest piece.
Man, I missed that.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And then, of course, my Prid.
I was trying to find it. Kneecaps getting above too.
Clash of Kings says we need God roll drops up the rate 18 damage on chest, 15k, 50k armor. Well, I mean, with what they're actually doing now, what people are going to be like 6 or 700k armor, and then if you add the way that you can have super heals on top of that, then everything's a tank meta, and then even the buffs that they currently have to what the on the PTS even now, then it's still going to feel like you're going to be shooting marshmallows at them. Upping armor percentages is definitely not the way to go.
And the problem with everybody getting God roll stuff, man, it just becomes a why play it anymore? There's nothing to make it,
Yeah, say
nothing
this
to
is
shoot
30%. Yeah.
Lost it, I guess.
I agree, Zero. But I mean, it'll come down to the same as Division 1. You were able to use a booster shot and, a box. So I doubt they would limit to everybody just use, one type of heal. But they should make it like we were talking about last night. If you're going to up it the more like armor you put on, then the less you'll receive. Like have some kind of where there's a period to where diminishing returns, and then get rid of the auxiliary batteries. So that way, if you are actually going into skill power, then you're going to miss out on some DPS or the tankiness. There's no point in having all three. That's why, I mean, yeah, having a piece of gear for every single brand set slot seems like a good idea. But I go ahead and tell you now, it's going to create a lot of builds, but also it's going to blow up in their face too. Because that was whoever came up with that idea. It seems good on paper in the first thought, but if they really sit back and think about it, the way the hills and stuff are, and the way that you can be tankiness, have DPS, and have super heals, it's the wrong direction. All they need to do is change up what Legos you can get on certain gear and what brand sets you can have a piece for all 6 pieces, drop them down to 4, and just reorder the actual buffs it gives you for having 1, 2, and 3 piece. That's all they had to do. They didn't need to have, a piece for every single slot. It just looked good, and so it would appease the masses, and then they could say in turn, oh, it'll create a lot more build diversity. But Division 1 might not have it perfect, but as far as the give and take aspect of it, to where you had to give up something in order to gain something, that's what it did have. Because if you wanted to have super skills, with a tactician, you gave up, tankiness. You gave up DPS. The only time you actually had DPS is when you ran up a pulse and a booster shot. That's it. Nope says, then you got people that are playing the PTS that literally just came back from playing Pokemon on Nintendo Switch and giving false, solid numbers on builds and talents. Keyword, he highlighted solid, so I take it that's solid FPS. Someone that they invited to the ETF and admittedly said that the only time he even plays Division 2 anymore is when it involves like an update and then he rushes back off. Yeah. Those are the type of people that they invited to ETF? Really? Someone that's not stayed in there with in the grit and the grime and the trenches and kept playing the game regardless of what was going on because they love the game. They're going to cater to people like that? Please. See, again, they shoot themselves in the foot.
That said person blocked me from his chat.
Yeah, solid block Gary from his chat just for being honest.
Yeah. That was funny.
Oh, no doubt, Joe. I mean, if everything goes... and gets better, and then makes it off PTS, because I mean, what they put down on PTS right now, 9 times out of 10, some stuff's going to make it out the way it is now, but a lot of stuff won't be. So there's still going to be plenty of tweaks. But yeah, most definitely. I mean, only time I even farm PBE is like when the raid comes out, when it, play it, but then I'm back in the DZ. I do my little farming runs when I first get on, is my little path, but then I'm off to the DZ. So I will definitely let you know when, and that'll be also go along with the whole vendor reset vid as well. Kingfresh, how the Eagle feels with nerf. From what the consensus is saying, there are, like, the AK is now stronger than the Eagle, but it depends on what talents you're actually using with the AK. Because the actual talents of the Eagle Bearer is still quite strong. But things are going to change. It's not going to stay the same. As always, they either over-nerf something and dial it back, or they under-nerf it, and then later on, when still the mask mob are still worried and having issues with it, they'll end up doing it again.
Yeah, because they said their next thing is looking at the talents on the Eagle Bearer. So
I can't aim. I cannot aim with that for nothing. I'm dead. And I got this crazy chick. Oh, I got 2 crazy chicks after me. Oh crap! I'm dead.
Behind.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
I'm reading the page note. Sorry.
It's something's been up with YouTube where it could be the bitrate, but I mean this is the same way I stream all the time. It's just straight to the PlayStation. I don't have any control over the bitrate or anything like that. It's on a PlayStation Pro.
It looks
So
pretty
you might,
decent. I mean, it looks good on mine.
hey, so you might want to try refreshing because Gary here, that's in chat with me, uh, he's not having an issue really with it.
No, it looks good to me.
They need to fire the whole development team and get new blood that actually has big cojones and let their boss know the real deal. Yeah. Well, I mean, what was his name? Moshada or whatever that used to be and part of the development team, but he like moved on. I think the Rainbow Six or something like that. I'm not really too accurate with that, but I saw the tweet on earlier today, and everybody was asking him to come back because I mean he not only played the game, he actually listened to the community.
Yeah.
When it does drop for check, can it compete with Eagle? I have no idea what that even means. But yeah, just a lot of emotions are running high right now, and it's understandable. But I also got to take a step back and realize, nothing is set in stone. Things will change between now and actual release. I mean, if you are constantly looking at, everything first and foremost, trying to find the negative instead of actually, seeing the positive, then of course anybody can find anything negative about anything. And if that's just their personality, then it's going to be even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go into it with a positive mindset, then you don't have to search for positive things. And while looking at the positives, then you can have from the outside the room and see the possible things that could be potentially a problem without actually having a biased attitude toward it. Because if you go in thinking all this is going to be trash and be negative, then you've already made your decision before you even play it.
Right. Yeah, you got at least 2 to 3 more weeks of the PTS, so.
Yeah, and this is just the first iteration, and they still have changed some things already slightly.
Right.
In the next couple of days, we'll get the next set of patch notes. They'll have the balancing of all weapons. Just because the AK is the way it is right now, doesn't mean even the AK's damage will stay that way, because they're going to be nerfs and buffs all across the board. I asked Stylander about it on Twitter, even if the Pestilence was going to get a buff. And he said it was a good chance. Also, he said there was a good chance that even the baked-in damage to health that are in ARs was going to change and get reduced. Yep. Because right now, you think about it, Berserk is only really good or viable in PvE because the way the 311-7 Eagle debacle, the way we're in now, the double hills, there's no point in rocking a Berserk build, even in the OTZ, because the damage to the health and the way how the Eagle is so strong. So you put those two things together, you're going to basically almost get melted at least half the time when going into the OTZ with a Berserk build, no matter if you do have like 400k health. So health builds is not viable. So if health builds are not viable, then why did you set up and separate armor and health from just what toughness originally was? Why break it down? So if they are going to make health builds viable, then something has to be do about that, because the assault rifle class is the only thing that directly affects either health or armor. Anything else, you have to get mods for it, damage to armor, or two-piece True Patriot, damage to armor. The assault rifle is the only thing that directly affects someone's armor or health pool. So that also make the Eagle stronger. So it was not just one thing, because it became like a thing to stack all armor and no health.
Yep.
So once all their armor was gone, you basically had to shoot them with 1 or 2 bullets, and with the damage to health, it was done and over with. I agree, Endo. SMG should have its place amongst just like everything. Not one particular archetype weapon should be above any other with the aspect of just completely dominating one to another. It should be one dominates in particular situations, such as SMGs up close. And then they're also doing something to the hipfire. They'll probably do the same thing as what they did in Division 1. They'll just increase the bloom. What's up, Queen Lloyd? How you doing? Yeah, I didn't start a stream to, more or less go into the dark zone or do this big uppity gameplay video, and that's why I held out on making the video that I put out earlier today until I had a chance to actually sit back and look at everything that we've been told as a whole. Because if you can take one little piece just here and there, yeah, you can make your argument in your case that it's going to be completely trash. It's going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to any game. But if you calm down, take a deep breath, take a step back, and look at it as a whole, it's not quite as bad as what it seems. But just like with every game, every iteration of every update of every game, there's going to always be issues. And no, I'm not drinking massive Kool-Aid. I'm just trying to look at it from an optimistic perspective and keep hope alive. Because I did it for 3 years for Division 1. Why can't I do it longer than 6 or 7 months with Division 2? It doesn't really make too much sense. You never know. They could possibly be another pred build in the works. I mean, with Sadist, the way the increase from 20 to 30, basically every skill under the sun just about is going to be creating bleed damage. So that's going to make ongoing directive. Negotiator's Dilemma. A buddy of mine, Ted, he rocks that now in the DZ. And then with all these 6 pieces going to 4, it does open up a lot of avenues, because that is also one thing that directly affects the PvP community, is not having specific roles inside of a squad while trying PvP. Everybody's running basically the same thing. You'll see a little bit of sniper builds sprinkled in there, sitting back in the back, while the other 3, are up front. But other than that, that's about it. I mean, everybody wants to drop pistols, do the little dance, and it becomes more of a heel-off than anything, than actually firing your gun. Basically, the way Division 1 has got to, you see more people running around in circles, dropping insta-heals in their boxes more than they're actually shooting. That's not fun. That's not really PvP. But everybody should have a role in a squad, and with the way these changes, so far, then you might have 2 people in a squad that by themselves, their builds just may be, all right. But combine those 2 builds together and get them to pretty much beat off the other one and play off the other one, complement the other one, then it turns both builds into a lot better than just what they are by themselves. Clash of King says the 35 name gear will make the EB great again. If you how to get that 15% back plus more. Well, I mean, the 15%, everybody's thinking that the 15% is set in stone. It's not. They've already said it's going to be going through multiple processes, but that's the whole point as far as the PTS and the feedback they're on. It's an exotic. It's supposed to feel powerful. But is it supposed to feel powerful because of its base damage or because of the talents on the gun itself? I mean, it could be one or the other, but not both. If both are super strong, then that's going to cause an issue. But if, one, the talents of it makes it strong, and you spec in to reflect those talents like headshot damage and precise, then it could still be just as good. Then it comes down to the player's skill as far as their aim and actually hitting headshots. It's not a given. Because right now there is no skill gap. Basically, all you got to do is drop a chem launcher and zigzag back and forth till while the other one starts to reload, and then shoot him. And then if you can't down him, then you're going to drop his chem launcher while he's reloading, and it's just going to be bounced back and forth, and becomes a heel off and a figure eight pretty much piss ice skating contest. And I mean, and if it's too weak, then you're going to see the combination of a P416 with the Nemesis secondary and still going into headshot damage. I'm not even having the same specialist.
What you got?
I'm running a gunner with the skill build. Like,
Oh,
oops.
yeah, that's not.
Yeah. I mean, if you're good with your aim, then the Eagleberg can still be good, just as the P416 with the Nemesis. It all depends on the person's aim. No, it's not going to be just a given. And there should be a skill gap.
Yeah.
The build that one uses should just be half of it. The other half depends on the player's aim, his situational awareness. These dudes are hauling butt.
Yeah, I know. Trying to get to that, see, man. Oh.
Oh, that droney kicked your butt, dude. Haha. Drone seeker for the win. Yeah, I mean, there should be options. I mean, that's the whole point of diversity. Yeah, there's going to be certain weapons that are going to be stronger than others, but those weapons should be, just dependent on the person's build that reflects said damage of whatever weapon they're actually using. Because if you can actually build it better, then you should be a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And the Nemesis is probably going to get it too, so... I mean, because the same argument that one uses with the Eagle Bear, according to the devs, is just an outlier that is stronger far above and beyond all the other sniper rifles. Well, okay, that's the same with the Nemesis. But everybody is going to uproar about the Eagle, just not the Nemesis. But it's coming to the Nemesis too. Yeah, that's just life. I mean, some people will agree with things, some people will disagree, but that's a part of life. I mean, but disagreeing with something doesn't mean you hate whatever you're disagreeing with, or somebody. It doesn't mean you hate somebody that has a different idea. It just means you're disagreeing. But just because people disagree does not mean they can't coexist. PvE players do not agree with PvP players most of the time, but that doesn't mean they can't coexist.
Oh, what's a lot going on?
How did we go rogue? I'm sitting there
I had no idea.
talking and reading, and oh, you had to have mashed the button.
I could have been killed y'all. Y'all gonna shoot.
I didn't know. I mean,
I didn't know we was even
I didn't
rogue,
know
buddy.
we going rogue. I guess it turned. I mean, the drone was shooting. I have no idea. I thought you went rogue. That's when I started doing it.
I mean, they should. Well, really, in my opinion, they should just do away with the whole damage to health and put something else in its place, and that would more or less go along with the same lines as the rest of the weapons. But if they're going to leave damage to health on there and can't come up with something else to put it in its place, then at least reduce it down to like 12, 13%. The same value that the LMGs get damage to targets out of cover. Yeah, I mean, they're not ever going to satisfy anybody, because no matter what they do, how, which side of the fence they lean towards, someone, some group, somebody is not going to be happy. And they should do what's right for the game, if they can actually do that, and not worry about anybody's opinion or who gets butthurt about whatever decision they make. As long as it's the right one for the game as a whole, then that's the one they should actually go for. Not because somebody gets butthurt over somebody's decision or disagrees with the route they're taking. But with them, I mean, it just seems like they half-ass a lot of things. So I don't know if they can actually come up and actually make the right decision. Maybe that's why they do ETS, because they need the help. And if that's the case, they need to find other directors, or they need to find somebody else besides who they got doing whatever. Ah!
Right. Oh my God, that dog.
That dog hurt, man.
I was coming back. That's two. That's the problem.
That dog humped my leg to death. But another good thing, we are only like 250 away from 10K subs, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate every one of you in chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, percentages for weapon class. Baked in bonus should be 14 to 15%. Yeah, I mean, that alone right there would make health-based builds a lot more viable. Because when you come to the double heal meta tank, whatever we're going on right now, 311.7, if you run cloaked on a typical build that you're running now and not spec'd into any health whatsoever, it's not viable. The only time cloaked is viable is on a health build like Berserk. But the way that the double heals, the tankiness, the 311.7 is right now, you can't run a proper Berserk build and expect to really compete, with somebody that's running a healer ball and chem launcher that has the overlap of on the ropes, spotter, and compensated. I'd be good with that as far as reload speed.
Ooh, that dog hurts.
But then they also would have to factor in the actual reload speed of the particular AR, and then figure out what the highest amounts you can get on certain mods to see, if you stacked reload speed, how actually would that work out in the end. But yeah, I like that idea. That would put it on an even playing field when it comes to talents or baked in attributes or whatnot, directly affecting health or armor pools, such as the armor right now is only to the two-piece True Patriot or mods. And you can also stack damage to health mods just the same way you can damage to armor. And then if you put that with an AR, then definitely is nobody going to be running Berserk and have no kind of health-based builds whatsoever other than PvE. Oh no, I don't think Berserk should be nerfed in PvP either. But with these changes that they're implementing, they should see how it actually is going to be affected by all these other changes and combinations you can have in conjunction with Berserk to make sure that Berserk isn't too OP. So it does need proper testing. Yeah. I mean, I don't see why we should do all the testing. I mean, maybe it's to make its player base to feel like, they're actually affecting the game in some perspective. But hindsight's 2020, and on the flip side of the same coin, if I mean they're a big multi-million-dollar company, do they not have game testers to test this stuff out beforehand before it actually enters the game? So why did they need us for?
Called cheap labor.
Cheap labor and a PR stunt.
Exactly.
That's why I'll probably never get ever invited to an ETF, because I would get kicked out of Sweden because I don't have a filter for my mouth and just call it like I see it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm proven wrong with some of the crap that comes out of my mouth, I will admit it and apologize for it. But that still is going to come out of my mouth one way or the other, and they'll probably Hamish will probably just call me "you bully." That would probably end up having him to go get another MRI.
Oh my god.
And if you spec solely into, health, suppose, and see, this is the thing, armor can take just as much damage as health can. And the only thing that affects them differently is damage to armor and damage to health. Other than that, just regular base damage. Let's say LMG only has damage to targets out of cover. Health can take just as much punishment and absorb just as much damage as armor. The only difference is if you put damage to armor on an LMG, then that's the only time that armor is going to be more affected by other than just that base damage of the LMG. And ARs are the only archetype weapon that has something baked into it that directly affects one or the other. And if they're going to do that, then they should have a weapon that actually has a baked-in damage to armor. Or just remove damage to health altogether, and like he recommended, just go reload speed. I mean, and it's good that they include us in parts of the process. Don't get me wrong, but if they take the time and the effort to make us feel like we're included, then at least take some of our advice into heed without having a so-called ETF. And it's kind of hard because not everybody goes to Reddit and jumps on there and just goes off on a big rant and tear every single day. And there's a lot of people that they make it a career just out of negativity on Reddit. But should they be listening to people that give advice to them on PvP when that person only has, say, 10 hours in PvP, or only play conflict and hardly ever goes into the dark zone? Should they be listening to those people ideas? So, and it becomes a hassle because then you have to actually research that person's gamer tag or whatever on Uplay or on PS4 or on Xbox to see, okay, they give this suggestion, but why did they give it? And, if it's about PvE and they're a PvP player, and it works both ways. A PvP player that could care less about PvE should not be given advice on PvE and vice versa. Because if someone's deliberately stated before, it doesn't matter what they do to PvP, they're still never going to play it. But yet they're, taking advice from that person and implementing it. That's where I have a problem with, people just submitting ideas or that type thing. Because if they are never going to play that game mode, then why are they even giving advice on it? The DZ should have that risk-reward factor. It should have something in it, just as PvE does, that is locked behind PvE content. Something the same importance should be locked behind PvP stuff. Because that's the whole lure of the risk-reward of the Dark Zone. It's supposed to be unruly. It's supposed to be vile and vicious. I mean, but also I get it. You don't have the size to where, you can stay away from people that are trying to PvP in the dark zone, so where you can farm landmarks and pretty much stay away from, PvPers, so that way you don't get ganked because you're just in there to farm. But while you're doing that, you get that sense of, your heart's pounding, you get in that rush because at any moment, you can be jumped. And that's part of being the dark zone. Right now, there is just no risk reward because they were going to put that 515 gear that they mentioned about putting in a dark zone. But then there was a big uproar saying, no, why should we be forced to go play PvP content to get good stuff? Well, is that not how the Division 1 was in the dark zone? At one point, there was stuff in the dark zone you could not get elsewhere. Right now, we have a Pestilence and the Yaw gear.
Yeah.
Now, what incentive does it entice players to actually venture into the dark zone to try to get anything? There's not. So if they would change those things and those aspects, regardless of what anybody else says, in turn would cause people to go into the dark zone more just to get what's in there and risk it for the biscuit. Yeah, Kid Chunk, and they might, between all 5 of them combined, they might have had 100 hours combined total, because majority of all of them, they spent all their time on PvE. So if this was supposed to be an update for PvPers in, the dark zone conflict area, then why did you invite PvE people? And when it was supposed to be about, the PvP, the dark zone conflict, why is 90% of the stuff directed toward PvE content? Yeah, the buffs and the new talents are good, and that does directly affect, PvP aspect. But then you got these nutcases out there that are just, I apologize, do not call them nutcases. Selfish people stating that, okay, just nerf it for PvP and don't touch it for PvE because it don't hurt nobody on PvE. The NPCs has feelings, brah. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's supposed to be a balance. Everybody's talking about equality, be tolerant and equal. Everybody should be on an equal path. So if one side gets it, then the other should too. Except for talents that only directly affect one side or the other. But when it comes to a PvP, just about every single talent on guns and gear directly affect PvP. Mm-hmm. So they can do it, but it is, not as easy as what people think, trying to find that niche balance between the two, because you want to feel like a god on PvE. You want to feel strong and powerful. I get that. Don't get me wrong. I do get that. But in turn, people that do PvP want to feel the same thing. And it all boils down to if you can spec and build a build properly. Most people just want stuff for free or without any effort. Thus, the participation caches that we are now getting in conflict.
Oh, my God.
That's like getting a participation ribbon for field day back 20 years ago. Come on.
Yep. Just for showing it.
And we all know if you have to earn something, you value it more. So everybody that's put, all these hours into raid completions, that's why they are so emotional and upfront and just disdained at the decision as far as the nerf, because they did take the time to grind the raid repeatedly with that very minuscule drop rate in order to get that eagle. So they directly value it more because they did take the time and had the time to put into actually getting it. Yeah, I like the non-normalized stats too, and there's not a lot of people talking about it either. I think it's a good step. Yeah, and also, if you're not 500, then, it'll still help those that are, under 500 gear score come up to, the rest. But yet we shouldn't get penalized for grinding.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. We should never get put down just because somebody else needs to be, equal to us. They should be brought up to us. Yeah.
Yeah, no more. Really, you had to have 3 builds because you had to have one for ODZ, one for conflict or normalized, and then you had to have your PvE build. So really, you had to have 3. So now you can differentiate PvE from just straight up PvP, whether it's conflict or in the dark zone. And then now we're going to have more stash space. We're going to have more loadout space. I mean, these are good things that not a lot of people are making videos on because negativity and drama create more views. And the only time you're going to see like positive news or whatever is somebody that's just trying to blow smoke up your butt and to generate views, like saying a new exotic, Mr. Epic Players. And yeah, I get a lot of slack because I call things like I see it. Whether, if I don't necessarily call them out by name, I'll say and speak in general as far as other content creators and, how they portray and do things. But everybody on YouTube puts videos up, streams for views. I mean, that's just it. But some do it due diligence and putting out, the right amount of what's proper, what's true, their own personal opinion without inflating it and using flashy thumbnails and giving false hopes or making false statements like we're getting something when we're really not. That's the only time I'm going to call out anybody is if I think they're doing a disservice to the community in which the game I play and the community that I'm a part of. Yes, there will be no more normalized dark zones. Yeah, Kichanga is right. I mean, the ODZ wasn't normalized to begin with because that's what they called ODZ. There was two normalized rotating dark zones, and then you had conflict. Well, they're getting rid of the whole normalized part of it, except for if it's mainly for endgame. So if you're below 500 gear score and you haven't reached endgame, then you'll still, get a buff from, certain aspects of normalization to kind of get you on an even playing field more or less with, everybody that's, grinded and min-max more or less their builds currently. But as far as the way the normalized system was, yeah, that's done and over with.
Oh my god. Yeah, it punished you for rolling stuff onto your gear. I mean, that sucked. It should never happen. You put time and effort in your gear, and then your values go down because you're going to normalize. That's crazy.
I just want this fixed. Like, why is my dude digging ditches?
Hey, he's working hard. At least,
Oh,
at least
no
he
doubt.
shouldn't get hot.
And then they still have the invisible wall behind the Lincoln Memorial, and then the boat across from Foggy Bottom, next to the entrance going into the sewer. There's still an invisible wall there. There's a lot of little small niche things that most people just look over that could be a real improvement to the game as far as the quality of life. Because when you get constantly getting deltas for checking maps and little small things like that, they add up. Even small things repeatedly happening add up over time, and then when something big happens, then it's going to really push you over the edge. And all this is normal, and then that's what's happening. But give us some time; things will die down. People will step back, see the big picture. That 15% will be reduced. It won't be 15%. And then you'll see all the other weapons, all the other ARs being adjusted, and we're supposed to be hearing about those in the next couple of days, as far as the nerfs, buffs to all the other weapons. And that's what I'm most interested in is seeing alongside of what other buffs they're going to actually do to talents. And because I like to build, I like to get on there and think outside the box. I don't like just to follow the crowd on what somebody else has put out. That's why at first everybody was like into the Berserk Strain Clutch. And when I was over here doing the Bloodsucker, everybody was like, that's not going to be any good. That's trash. And then like a couple of weeks later, like, bye-bye Berserk. And then for months now, it's always been about Bloodsucker 311.7.
And people have copied your builds, plenty of them.
Yeah, nothing but no skills.
Nothing but steals, my guy.
Yeah, nothing but steals. But yeah, I just want to interact with the community. I mean, that was the whole purpose of this live stream. And like I said, I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. I just want to interact with you out there because there's only so much you can kind of to conversate about through, text, because you can't really judge how someone's saying something by reading it in text, like on Reddit or in social media, because, I mean, they're putting emphasis on words, and the manner in which they say it can say a lot more than just what they're saying itself. No, and also I do with that, but if you go to Twitter and read the exact question that I asked Highlander, then you'll see his response to that. That statement that you're talking about, kid, is saying leave the eagle bear the way it is and bring everything up. That's not what I just said. The eagle's getting a nerf. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. It's just not going to be as big of a nerf. But when it comes to the other things, raising them up or tweaking certain other exotics to make them, more viable, it's not about making everything just as strong as this or that, but bringing them up just a little bit here and there to make, because if you take the eagle off the platter, then everybody's going to go back to the AK and P416. Then you're back in the same place to having the same argument that we are currently having with the eagle, because it's leaps and bounds above the rest. Oh, I mean that's common sense.
Yep.
But just because you may tweak one or two out of the rest of the 8 to make them not less on the same lines of damage, because you got to look at RPM, rate of fire, on each and every one of them, then you have to throw that in, because the CTAR shouldn't be as strong as a P4 because of the rate of fire. But if they tweak each, something, and out of the whole 8 other ARs, and they just tweak 1 or 2 to make them more appealing than just going with the whole P416 or the AK. But yeah, I mean, I don't see. But in that conversation you posted, that was directly correlating with someone saying leave the eagle bearer alone and buff everything else up to it, because that's a big leap if they done that. But if they drop the eagle, let's say 8 to 10%, and then just barely brought up the rest, to come up a little bit closer to not the eagle but the AK and the P416, then that can still be on par with their status quo, because that's not much of a leaps and bounds. Because I mean, if they raise like the CTAR up, even 3 or 4% is still something good and in the right direction. With its RPM and certain talents that you can have on it. I mean, it all depends on the person's build, but it makes things more enticing to want to try them out and make them, think that it's actually can be better, in which, it can be in the right hands with the right build. But when you have a damage gap of 7 or 8K, it doesn't matter how the RPM is. If both guns had the same bullets and one's got 7K higher damage than the other, then you know which one you're going to pick.
Yeah.
Well, Hanson, I mean, they've stated that it wasn't directly toward anybody's crying. They knew it was super strong before it even released, and then they went ahead and released it into the game no matter what, and just said, fuck it, we'll just throw it out there and see what happens. Everybody fell in love with it.
Another thing is, it was just to get people to farm the raid, because they wanted as many people into that raid as they could get. So how would you do that? An overpowered weapon.
The eagle it's not the eagle's fault. The eagle didn't do nothing wrong.
It's not.
It was used as a publicity stunt.
Exactly. That's it. I mean, I don't think the gun needs to be nerfed into the ground myself.
Because
I don't even have one.
If you're a game developer and you're thinking, how do we get people to really go gung ho for this raid? I know, we'll throw only certain sets in there that you can only acquire from the raid, and we'll throw a super duper OP weapon in there. And then once, a handful of people start using it, and those YouTubers put out videos on it, they're going to see how super strong it is. Then everybody's flocking to the raid. Then you start people complaining about as far as matchmaking for that raid, and you see how the snowball goes.
And the drop rate is a killer.
But eventually, that snowball will run into something, and this is where we're at now. It ran into a wall.
Yeah. I mean, that's several stuff that happened with the house at Division 1. That became the most popular gun. So,
Statlander had leaned toward that's still a possibility, Kill. That nothing is set in stone, that it could be a combination of tweaking the talents that are on it and yet still giving it... It's going to get a damage nerf either way you look at it. Depending on how much is also depending on what they do to the talents of it. But I think they'll probably settle on like an 8 to 10% nerf and then still possibly tweak the talents of it. But, I mean, if the talents of that particular weapon make the gun what it is, then it just depends on the person's hands. But then again, you kind of go back to the whole P416 secondary as Nemesis kind of situation. Then you're going to see everybody using that, just like before the Eagle was ever a thing. Then you're going to be right back in the same boat. So it's still going to have to be above it. And then he said, named weapons are going to be a little bit better than the regular weapons. So the named weapons are going to kind of be like an in-between of what the regular weapons are and then the exotics.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Alex says, I don't even mind the Eagle Bear change. I do mind all the other changes, talent, skills, etc. Those affect a lot of builds.
Okay.
Well, they do affect a lot of builds, but the main one that people are using is the 3.11.7 variation. That's why the changes are coming, because they want it to affect change, because 90% of the community are running the 3.11.7. Some variation of it, to where you get DPS, you get tankiness, and you have super heals from skill power because you got 7 utilities. You should have to forfeit something in order to gain something else. That's the way it should be. So the overlapping of the spotter on the ropes should have never been in the game. I mean, they did increase, spotter and gave it a buff already, and then they're going back to what it was. Because it was a combination of the 3.11.7, the overlapping of spotter and on the ropes, and then you throw the Eagle in there, and then if you're not using spotter, then you're running double heals and still having on the ropes, on there as well, and then everybody's 450, 500k armor, and having, 160k chem launcher, and then another, 100 and some odd k healer ball. And then we only have really 3 ways to combat that. You have Cloaked, Pestilence, and Sweet Dreams. We don't have a Disrupt in this game, so we can't disrupt skills. The closest thing we got to that is Cloaked. But Cloaked goes along the line with a health build. Yeah. You probably don't, Alex, but majority of the community does. Because it's the best of all worlds. And then plus when you have the Eagle on top of that, or if you're running a Nemesis with a P416, there's a few people that refuse to, go through. I wasn't running a 3.11.7. You look at all my other builds, I was running 3-piece yaw gear with a Pestilence and M60 for the longest of times. I just have here recently put the 3.11.7 on, because I called it what it was going to be before there was even such a 3.11.7. And I wasn't going to follow in that meta. I've never been, a meta writer. But if you're a competitive player, yeah, you can try all this other stuff. But if you wanted to prove a point like I did, that I can be on par with everybody else, and if not better, if I just strap on a mediocre 3.11.7 and still mop before with you, then yeah, you are using not just the Eagle Bear, and Eagle Bear left to the side, just the 3.11.7 crutch. So, I mean, something had to give.
Yep.
Because I mean, if you're a game developer and you put all these other, variations of different builds, but yet one is just like super good and the most viable as far as you get the most benefits without having any of the losses, which is the 3.11.7, then everybody's going to flock to it like they did. And before this, it was either Bloodsucker, and then it was Unbreakable before then, because everybody was more or less abusing it in the ODZ. It was pretty much like the new Nomad. So they tweaked it, and then everybody jumped on the Bloodsucker. When I said Bloodsucker was better all along anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020 though. Only thing we can do is strap into this roller coaster and still play it and hope for the best. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, kid, yeah, they're just probably gonna end up doing the same thing they did in Division One when Division One had a lot of hipfire issues, and that was just make the bloom bigger. That's it. But it was a combination of hipfire, and then when you can share chem launcher heals with other non-rogue players, which is they're addressing that you won't be able to do that anymore either. But the way it currently is, by you're rogue, but yet you're able to get healing off a non-rogue player that's fighting you, then that just caused people to even more just wanted to run up, drop a piss pull, and do a circle jerk. I mean, that's not PvP. Yeah, you see hipfire in my videos, but it's not the first choice and the first decision that I make. It should be a last resort. Like if you're getting pushed and that's the only option you have. But it should not be a first choice into going to combat. You just run up, drop a heal, and start hipfiring. That's not really true PvP. That's just abusing the system. Yes, kid. That's what I've been saying. That it's still going to have somewhat of a nerf, no matter which way you look at it. But also, other weapons are also too going to a balance pass, meaning that some weapons will probably end up getting a buff too. But that's not saying that every single weapon was. But I mean, I think my statement was on point. I mean, it could be good, but my thing is, I'm on East Coast, and they've already, tweaked this matchmaking thing already once before. So if I'm on East Coast, how come when I initially get in, I'm always like being put on European servers or West Coast servers? I mean, it can be good, but then it can constantly, be in like my situation. Yeah, you can matchmake, but it might not necessarily match make people that's, are closer to me. It might throw me in like the UK like it has been, or, West Coast, which is, there goes the, the lag issues, bullet registration, which is still an issue. And I understand wanting more people in the dark zone, bigger dark zones, but if the servers are crap now, adding on top of it the same way that they do with new content when they haven't even fixed old content, it's just compounding the situation. I've been saying this for the last 6 months. Everybody's calling for new stuff. Why get new stuff when you haven't fixed the old stuff? You're just piling crap on top of crap. I don't know, kid. Because generally a lot of my clan is on East Coast, but it's like even it would throw them in the UK, and they were supposed to make the server pool smaller to where they could have more people matchmake together. But when you don't even hit matchmaking to matchmake to somebody or somebody else's server, but just turn on your game, upload it, and then just immediately by yourself just go to the DZ and automatically it throws you into UK and you're in like the US East Coast. I mean, yeah, something's wrong. So they definitely need. I don't know what they're gonna do, but they definitely need some server changes, fixes, or tweaking. That's for sure.
Yeah, because the changes they already made, they're making where you could walk into the DZ and it automatically puts you in a, transfer you to a full server. That's probably going to wind up being a lot of issues with that.
Yep. Killer Mike says they need to bring a trade system in the game instead of you having to be in my group when I pick it up for a certain time before I can't share. I understand where you're coming from, but then people would abuse it. And you would have these people like you see on eBay right now that, they'll give them your account, pay them a couple $100, and they'll go farm the Eagle Bearer for you. You get a lot of trolls preying on the younger crowd with that same system right there. Oh, you've been searching for this? It's hard to come by. It's rare. I'll sell it to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be good, but there's a lot of evil people out there that will abuse it just to profit from it. I mean, there's a matchmaking for the normal, not the normal raid, but the discovery mode raid. I mean, they could put it in for the normal raid, but the same thing that everybody's been saying, I mean, it would work probably half the time. I mean, you have clans out there saying, yeah, come join my clan, but first you got to have so many clears. I mean, you can matchmake for said raid, or somebody posts up on social media or at LFG, like we're going to go run a raid run, and then you hop in there with them. They send you an invite, and then they look at your build and see how many raid runs you have or completions, and then they kick you. That would be the same thing if they actually had matchmaking for the normalized raid. You would have people in there that have the majority of their people in there, say 5, and they needed 3 others, and they would cycle through those same 3 until they found someone with the amount of raid clears that they're looking for, and that has the right kind of build that they're looking for. And if you don't meet those qualifications, they would kick you. That's what matchmaking and the normal raid would end up being. Yes, it would be nice for some, but for the majority, that will be what's happening, because that's what's happening all on social media right now. You have clans recruiting saying you need this amount of raid clears, this particular build in order to join their clan. Next thing you know, they're going to be asking for a piss test and a urine sample. But I mean, I do understand it, but I also see the flip side of the coin. Just like my wants and my suggestions in the game, the reason why sometimes I hold back and don't initially throw out a video like some of these other greasy content creators do, these crybaby G's, is because I'll actually sit back and think about, what I'm going to put out and look at it from all different sides and not just view it the way I see it. I try to view it from different angles of how somebody else. And that's why I bounce ideas off the people that's in my clan right now. We get on just, butting around the dark zone. We bounce ideas off one another. We talk about the game. We converse. I mean, I don't jump to conclusions. Potential, maybe. I mean, they are getting like a 20% buff, but it hasn't made it through PTS right now. I mean, we can speculate this what ifs all day, but at the end of the day, until it gets closer to at least the second or third iteration of the PTS, we can't really, know. Squeaky Clean, don't bring your BS garbage in there. Whoever my mod is in chat, just ban Squeaky Clean. I don't care, bruh. If you have a situation or a problem with him, take it to the police. Don't bring it in my chat, you punk ass bitch. Bye. Yeah, they're taking care of that, gamer. As far as, there's another gamer with a 10 key. Yeah, you won't be able to share heals.
That's me, by the way.
Oh, well, Holmes, yeah, they're taking care of that where you, like, if you're a rogue, you won't be able to share heals with a non-rogue and vice versa.
Oh, hell yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the combinations where they're bringing the 6-piece down to 4, so that means, you can still have 2 of the pieces, and then you have the chest piece and the backpack piece that's actually going to be able to have talents on them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that's going. I mean, just think of Negotiator's Dilemma, just tankier than what it is now.
Okay. Man, this is so good. This is what we need to have. This is good stuff.
Yeah, the SMGs, that they ever since the whole Papega build, ever since then, what they done to them is like, eh. But I mean, with them buffing surgical, as far as instead of 5% crit, 10% crit chance, it's gonna make crit builds a lot easier to obtain and a lot more viable, all across the board, no matter what archetype weapon it's gonna be. Yeah, but you can't necessarily ask for new content if they are just gonna and not fix the old content. You're just piling crap on top of more crap, and you're just gonna compound the problems that it currently has until you fix the problems we have now. There's no point adding stuff on top of it because that's gonna just make the situation and the game even worse. You're just compounding the problems it already has.
Yep.
And yeah, they said it about the house got nerfed in Division 1. People said the same thing, that they were going to leave the game. But yet they nerfed it. Those same players that said that still played the game, and it ended up being a better part of the Division 1. So all these people that are saying, "Oh, this is the straw that broke the camel's back." I heard that for 3 years, and still the same people done it. And the ones that are just making videos about it now are just using that drama to generate their views.
Yeah,
When they don't profess to people that they're these big PvPers, when they're just really glorified farmers. Come on, bruh.
Unfortunately, we can look everything up. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you can look up their stats.
Right.
They're just
Exactly,
greasy used car salesmen, just throwing shit out there because drama and negativity sells on social media. That's what it is.
Yeah. So I have a question. So we're about 6 months in, right? And D1, you said 3 years, right? So unfortunately, I don't have experience in the Dark Zone from D1 at all. So my experience is limited to the 80 hours I put in the Dark Zone here. So
Exactly.
6 months in, comparatively speaking, would you say we're the same problems, or just as worse problems, or how do they compare 6 months in?
That's hard to say. I mean, with the potential that these new things have, I think for the bigger majority, looking at everything as a whole, I think it's going in a better direction than what it was. Because, I mean, it was getting boring. Everybody was running the same build because it was the most viable build out there, because you got the benefit of all three stats. You had DPS, you had tankiness, and you had skill power. Everybody and their mama was running it, except for a select few when, they would run a skill build. So basically, just here and there. And then I sprinkled in a bunch of sniper builds, especially on PvP, where they would sit in the back and, take pop shots while the other three pressed forward and, did their thing in the Dark Zone. But majority of the player base, all throughout PC, both consoles, were doing 3.11.7 variations.
Yeah.
So this is going to create more viability. Now, whether or not they're actually going to be good or too good that's why I guess they're having a PTS. That way they can tweak it here and there, and there's going to be multiple iterations. It's just, if you're going to play PTS, at least do due diligence to the whole community and actually test things out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I totally
That's
agree.
it.
I just wasn't sure as far as how they compared, if the problems were just as bad. Because ultimately, I asked the question because at the end, Division 1 was awesome, right? So if they're able to fix that eventually, I'm hoping to get that hope to have be applied here, so that the same hope will be applied here also.
Division in the same time frame as Division 2 was totally different. It was off. I mean, it got off the rails, later on when they started introducing gear sets. And they couldn't balance them right. So it was totally different. I mean, actually, Division 2 is kind of ahead of what Division 1 was at that time, in the same time.
Okay.
All right, Justin says, how do you feel about brand sets having all slots available? Heavy theory craft. Oh, I mean, it may sound good on paper, but I think it's going to blow up in their face, to be honest with you. I think that was, in my opinion, a wrong move. Because it wasn't about certain pieces not having all their pieces. It was about the buffs or talents or whatever you got 1, 2-piece, and 3-piece that was just out of order, and certain combinations you had on brand sets that should have just been reworked and redone to limit people having certain Legos on certain pieces. And having the 6-piece Heligard, everybody, I mean, you can make a 5-piece Heligard, throw in one Fenris, and bam, you got a 311-7 God build. I mean, they should have took the 6-piece Heligard and the Murakami and then brought them down to only having 4 instead of having all 6 to actually make you choose. And then instead of the 1-piece of, like, say, Fenris that gives you 10% damage to with the AR, they should have moved that from 1-piece to at least 2-piece. So that way you had to have 2 Fenris to actually use it. And since there's only 3 things you can have a Fenris on, then that forces you to sacrifice either 2 slots with the Heligard knee pads to further your tankiness, or go with the 10% AR damage, and vice versa, because you had 2 offensive on Heligard holster, and then you had 2 defensive. So if you had to have 2 Fenris, which is the chest and one of those, either you're going for DPS or you're going for tankiness. You had to choose between the 2. You couldn't have both, and now we have both.
Yeah. I concur on several levels from that statement, man. I mean, to your point, one of the exotic gear sets, it gives you 10,000 armor on kill or whatever it is. And it's just like 10,000 armor, like that doesn't do anything. This is supposed to be like a super powered, gear set, right? So, again, that opportunity cost is not there. It's not even. It's not there at all. The trade-off, if you will, is another way of saying it. It's just not there.
Yeah, that's what it's mainly lacking, and letting everybody, pretty much forced to be confined to only one set of ideas when it comes to build, the 311-7 variation, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and then people's like, well, it's too hard to make things, like, they need to dumb things down, having to deal with health and armor, and then you have utility. They should just go back to having toughness. Well, then that kind of takes away health builds versus armor builds.
Yep.
When they just, tweak the damage to health on ARs like we were talking about earlier, I mean, that would have, brought down the Eagle in itself in PvP and made Berserk builds more viable to combat the 311-7s.
Build. Yeah, man, exactly.
Because you can have a 7-7-7 Berserk build and still have the 7 utilities, for Berserk, and still be, have a decent enough health pool.
Yeah. Your point about that weapon being the only, or that class weapon, if you will, being the only one that attacks, that applies to either health or armor is another great point. And not only that, but it's 29%, man. That's a lot.
Yeah, and the way, you can, if you didn't, the variation of the 307 double heals, then it makes it pointless, since that you do have 29%. Even if it was a regular P416, you're still getting 29% damage to straight health to a direct health build.
Right.
That's having 450, 500k armor. That's, you're trying to say, okay, you need to skate uphill.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. And that's all I've seen the last 4 days is double heals. That's all I've seen.
But this has gone on for longer than what I thought. But I did want to interact with the community and not just make a video about it, or talk to you on social media, so that way you can ask me first and foremost, single-handed, and get my take and my view on things. Am I right about everything? Of course not. But it's my opinion, and whether I'm right or wrong, you can disagree with me, and if you do, I'm not going to hate you for it. I mean, I like constructive conversations. I mean, I like having conversations with individuals where we're not bringing our race, color, creed, religion into it, or age, like even some content creators like to do, because I believe there's a God, so they want to bring that. I'm 40 years old and a gamer, so they like to throw that in there because they have nothing else, because they make half-ass greasy builds.
Yeah, man. I agree. That's why I'm in your clan, and I stand beside you, brother. That's exactly right.
I appreciate all you that tuned in, kid. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I thank you guys for tuning in and allowing us to have this Discord between, everybody, so that way we can communicate, because a lot of people just put out videos about certain topics and then just base it off what social media, but that's not really their direct community. Their viewers are their community, and I like interaction with my community and my viewers. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Hope you all have a good night. Keep those fingers crossed, and there'll be more of these coming up in the future as this PTS and this title update progresses. Alex, welcome to Goriila Nation. We'll see you guys. Fudge you later.